Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has described Israel's actions in Gaza as morally wrong, while promising his support for a Palestinian state. He stopped short, though, of promising support for a French resolution to recognise Palestine at the UN in September.
Yeah, the Prime Minister...
Look, what we will do is we'll make a decision based upon the time. Is the time right now? Are we about to imminently do that? No, we are not.
Yeah, the Prime Minister said support for a Palestinian state would depend on guarantees that Hamas would play no governance role and that such a state would pose no direct threat to Israel. He left open the possibility that Australia might recognise a Palestinian state, even if our US allies did not.
Would you be willing to do this without the United States?
Australia will always make our decisions as a sovereign state, but the role of the United States is critical.
What I find outrageous is that this is even being discussed while 50 Israelis are still being held hostage in tunnels under the streets of Gaza, and while the terrorist organisation Hamas is yet to surrender or be defeated. This is so premature to be talking about a Palestinian state that it plays into the very goals of Hamas themselves. So I just think this is reckless on the part of the Australian government. And there's no question Anthony Albanese wants a Palestinian state. The 2023 ALP National Conference said that this was an important priority for any Australian government. And while not saying he wants one imminently, Anthony Albanese and his government have been slowly softening the Australian public up for a government that will demand that Palestinian state be recognised. You notice they've changed the language. They now talk about a Palestinian state being recognised as part of the movement towards peace rather than we have peace, then we'll recognise a Palestinian state. That's a significant change. And while Anthony Albanese says he won't support the French motion at the UN in September to immediately recognise a Palestinian state, just hours after the French announced that, Albanese came out slamming Israel, saying, I can't say whether their behaviour is criminal, but it's unethical, it's immoral. And so there's no question the Australian government is softening up the public for them to recognise a Palestinian state. Maybe not imminently, but at some time soon. There's no doubt in my mind at all.
Well, let's not forget the Prime Minister was once an activist back in his day, so this would come as no surprise. But what I have noticed personally is the change in language since Albanese was re-elected. It's become a lot more hard and a lot more direct towards Israel. Yeah. Only last week, of course, Australia was one of 28 nations around the world that signed a letter demanding the end to the war, which actually Hamas praised in a statement. Hamas released a statement. They thought it was fantastic. Then the other day, the Prime Minister on Friday released what I believe was his strongest criticism of Israel to date, where he said that we call on Israel to comply immediately with its obligations under international law. Well, hang on a second. What about Hamas's obligations under international law? It's still got 50 hostages under there. We don't know how many are dead or alive. And now today, this walking both ends of the streets, leaving the door open to possible Palestinian statehood, it's absolutely changed. I think it is fascinating that it was only 2 weeks ago the Prime Minister was whining and dining in China, yet didn't call out the human rights abuses in China. They were happy that China is punishing or has punished us militarily in the past and also economically. And also don't forget that it's China that's cozying up to the likes of Russia and Iran right now. But we didn't hear a peep from the Prime Minister on that. So really, his lingo is only convenient at certain times. In the end, Hamas want one state, their own state. They want to wipe out Israel and continue their terrorism. This war could have stopped today, could have stopped on October 8, 2023, had Hamas just released the hostages. They have not done that. It is Hamas from the very beginning. But once again, we're always seeing this misplaced criticism.
And that's the thing that really annoys me. Anthony Albanese mentioned the hostages in his interview on the ABC, but as always, it's like an addendum. It's a footnote. And by the way, we want the hostages released. That should be the first order of business because that's what this conflict is about. Yeah. It's about the hostages. So why that's not continually the first order of business is absolutely beyond me. The challenge Anthony Albanese has got is he's still trying to get a meeting with Donald Trump. And you heard there him say that he's open or he's equivocating on whether Australia would necessarily be lockstep with the US in terms of their recognition or not of Palestine. He certainly can't afford to go too far before he's had his meeting with Donald Trump, because if the Australian government government moved on Palestine without US agreement, that would really cement a major divide between Anthony Albanese and Donald Trump, which he cannot afford.
The other point I would just make is Hamas is the roadblock on every turn. Even just on Friday, Hamas denied a ceasefire agreement which had been put forward by the United States and Israel, and actually prompted the United States Special Envoy on the matter to put out a statement saying that Hamas was being completely selfish in its actions here. So again, it's Hamas at every roadblock. We don't hear that. It's even been skewed by the media internationally.
It should be obvious to everybody, and certainly someone as smart as Anthony Albanese, that the images of children being killed, of people starving, those images serve Hamas. Hamas are happy to hold Israelis hostage and to hold Palestinians hostage because governments like Australia then push further and further for more recognition of Palestine. It all works to Hamas's favour, and it prolongs the situation rather than ends it. And for the Australian government not to realise that is incredibly naive, or it's something worse.
No, absolutely, spot on.